she's so fine. Hell of a ride, blows my mind. Hell of a ride, lights my day.
What's good, guys? This story is coming out via The Root, wrote by Stephen A. Crockett Jr., came out Wednesday evening, and I want to thank Marie722 for sending it to me. Appeals court finds in this case the N-word isn't a fighting word. Clearly, the court is bugging. A retired U.S. Air Force officer, who is white, recently had his conviction overturned by a federal appeals court that found that his use of the word, N-word, was protected by the First Amendment. According to the Associated Press, Jules Bartow was arrested and didn't have his ass kicked after he used the hardest of R words while speaking to a black store clerk and a black customer. Bartow was reportedly shopping for boots, no word on whether or not these were cowboy boots, at the Quantico Marine Corps Exchange in November of 2018. Prosecutors and witnesses during the trial noted that while shopping, Bartow posed all these rhetorical questions, including asking the customer, while referring to the store clerk, quote, "If I called her a N-word, would she still say good morning?" End quote. Bartow was convicted of violating Virginia's abusive language law, AP reports. On Tuesday, Bartow saw that conviction overturned by a, quote, 3-judge panel of the 4th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals. The court found that the First Amendment permits criminalization of abusive language, but only if the government proves the language had a direct tendency to cause immediate acts of violence by the person to whom it was addressed, end quote. Quote, "The ugly racial epithet used by Bartow undoubtedly constituted extremely abusive language, but because the government failed to prove, or even to offer evidence, that Bartow's use of this highly offensive slur tended to cause immediate acts of violence by anyone, his conviction cannot stand," end quote, Judge Diana Gribben-Motz wrote in the unanimous ruling. Apparently, you can throw the N-word around willy-nilly as long as you aren't menacing with it. Examples. Quote, "Good day, N-word," end quote. Quote, "That's a fine Chevrolet you're driving, N-word," end quote. Quote, "Hey, N-word, did you eat all the potato salad?" End quote. The court pointed out that Bartow was saying all kinds of crazy shit that day after he was greeted by the store clerk, who asked if she could help him, to which he reportedly raised his voice and asked, quote, "If I had indigestion, diarrhea, or a headache, would you still address me as good morning?" End quote. My answer is, yes, she probably would. Because how the fuck would she know that you had, quote, indigestion, diarrhea, or headache, end quote? Now, if she was struggling with those ailments herself, then no, she probably wouldn't have been so nice. You stupid ass N-word. Bartow being loud and indignant caused quite the stir, including causing one black man dressed in civilian clothes to try to explain to Bartow that the people at the store, which is on a military installation, greeted him kindly because they were trying to be nice. Bartow, who was trying on boots, still unclear as to whether these were Harley-Davidson boots, then said, quote, "If I called her N-word, would she still say good morning?" End quote. Nah, N-word. From AP. A store security officer testified that when she got to the area, she observed a heated conversation between Bartow and a white lieutenant colonel who was, quote, "very animated," end quote, and pointed his finger at Bartow. The officer said she escorted Bartow out of the store and he was arrested by base security officers. Bartow pleaded not guilty and the case went to trial before a magistrate judge. The judge concluded that Bartow, quote, "directed the slur at an African-American man who was talking to him," end quote. The judge found Bartow guilty and fined him $500, the maximum penalty under Virginia law. The Fourth Circuit overturned the conviction, noting the First Amendment. Also from AP, Associated Press. The Fourth Circuit noted that the U.S. Supreme Court has held that there are a few types of narrowly defined speech that can be restricted, consistent with the First Amendment, including, quote, "fighting words," end quote. But the Supreme Court has repeatedly stated that whether speech constitutes, quote, "fighting words," end quote, must be analyzed on a case-by-case basis, and courts must consider the circumstances surrounding such expression, the Fourth Circuit wrote. Quote, over the decades, the court has repeatedly determined that the Fourth Amendment places considerable limits on the criminalization of speech. We must abide those limits, even if that means, as it does here, that shameful speech escapes criminal sanction, end quote, the Fourth Circuit said in its ruling. Quote, most of us agree that what was said in the store was deeply offensive and disgraceful, end quote. Jonathan Turley, a law professor at George Washington University, told AP. Quote, but the First Amendment is designed to protect unpopular speech. It often means that as free speech advocates, we are forced to defend the speech of people who engage in obnoxious and deeply upsetting language, end quote. I would like to refer everyone to the book of, and you can read that on the screen, chapter, and you can read that, Knucketh if you bucketh, 13:4, which states, so if an N-word come and run his mouth just like a hoe, punch him dead in his nose and stomp his ass to the floor. Amen. Wonderfully wrote article by Stephen A. Crockett Jr. So I just wanted to bring this to the channel. Let me know what you think about it in the comments. And just a little FYI for those trolls that have started following because of the Michaela Miller situation, you will get blocked. Like, I'm not even going to deal with the garbage. And I'm going to end it on that note. Thanks for watching, guys.